from ever eating of the tree of life again, but the cherubim is there to protect the way. And we know the way is Jesus Christ, right? He leads us back to that tree of life, which will be in heaven as we read in Revelation. The population on the earth began to multiply, and then we find that there were sacrifices or offerings being given to the Lord by Cain and Abel. Cain was upset that God did not accept his offering, and he slew his brother in the field. And of course, Abel's blood cried up to the Lord, and the Lord approached him and said, "Where's your brother?" And he said, "Am I his keeper?" So he was cursed, and he was sent out into the land of Nod as a vagabond, as a wanderer. And then God gave Eve another child named Seth to carry on the lineage. And then we covered the genealogies to include Seth's line and Cain's descendants. We talked about how Enoch was a special person. He walked with God, and eventually God took him or raptured him up. So we talked about that. The fallen angels, we talked about that in Genesis chapter 6, how they went and took wives of all they chose, and they had offspring, which were these mighty men, these giants. It's gigantus in the Greek, which is where the word giant comes from, but it really means earthborn. But it was an unholy union. It was an abomination. They were not made in God's image. These Nephilim were not in God's image. They were an abomination. And eventually, all flesh became corrupted. But he found that Noah was perfect in his generations, and we talked about his genes were still pure. He was not tainted. And so God made a pact with Noah saying, build an ark. And we're going to put animals on it, and I'm going to save you through the flood that's coming. Water began to fall from the sky, and the earth spewed forth its waters from the deep, and it flooded the entire earth. All flesh was destroyed, save Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. And so that brings us up to today. The last time we read, the waters came, lifted the ark up, and everything died. So tonight we are in Genesis chapter 8. We did go over the timeline of the flood, so as a refresher for that, Noah and the animals were in the ark 7 days before it starts to rain. And we read about that in chapter 7. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. The flood waters prevailed for 150 days. The ark floated for 5 months, and then it came to rest on Mount Ararat for 7.5 months. And we'll read about that tonight in chapter 8. Total days Noah and his family spent on the ark was 377 days. And we're going to read about that tonight as well. So let's go ahead without further ado, and let's go into verses 1 through 3. And God remembered Noah and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. So we see here that the rain stops coming down, and then the subterranean waters, they stopped, giving forth all the water that was beneath. And so we see that God caused a wind also to come. We know wind will dry up something really quick. So God caused the winds to come, and it started drying up all the water. Verse 4. And I want you to tell me if you can find out what's interesting about verse 4 after I read it. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Arafat, or Ararat. Anything stick out with that verse? What questions do you have? Okay, the 7 and so the 7th month on the 17th day, so that's some sevens in there, right? Okay. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to go back and look. I know it's mentioned several times, so. Where fire struck the mountain. Anything else? What about the date? Yeah, so there's a lot about rest in here, right? You're going to see the birds flying. They're looking someplace to put their feet down and rest. And so the ark comes to rest. So there's a lot about rest in this chapter. There is. But the Holy Spirit felt it needful to put the exact date in here. And nothing is in the Bible by happenstance. If it's in the Bible, it's in the Bible for a reason. So, knowing that the treasure of kings is to search out a matter that maybe God has hidden from us, that should tell you, dig. Why did he tell us the exact date of that? And to understand that, you need to understand the Jewish calendar. Now, I've written it over here on the whiteboard. They have two Jewish calendars. One is a civil calendar, and the other one is a religious calendar. Okay? The civil calendar is their official calendar. It begins in Tishri, which is in the fall. Okay? And then you have a religious calendar. The new year begins in Nisan, and it begins in the spring. All right? And you can hopefully you can see that up there, how they're the first month of the year for the civil, and then the first month of the religious is Nisan. Now, why is that important? And then why did it change? Because in Exodus chapter 12, verse 2, God told Moses, you're going to change the first of the year. You're going to change it, okay? Exodus 12, verse 2, he says, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So Jewish people, no longer are you looking at Tishri as the first month. It is now Nisan. Okay? This was given to Moses when he was telling him about the death angels coming in Egypt, and he's going to slaughter. And so if you don't have that blood, the Passover, you're in trouble. Okay? So God's like, this month, Nisan, will be the first month. And so there you have the religious calendar. And the Jews used the religious calendar for all their holidays, their feasts, etc. All right? You following me? Second, you have to be familiar with the 7 feasts of Moses, or the 7 feasts of Israel. Okay? Who's here heard about the feasts of Israel? Raise your hand. All right. Passover's a feast, right? First fruits is a feast. The Feast of Trumpets, there's 7 of them. I'll give them to you. Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, First Fruits, Pentecost, Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and then the Feast of Booths or Tabernacles, either one. Now, you can read about all of those feasts in Leviticus chapter 23. The Lord goes over, these are the feasts that you will remember, okay? And these are the dates and the times. Some of them are specific dates, and other ones are like this many days after, okay? And so you have to kind of really study that to find out more about them. All of them are commemorative in nature of Israel's history. So the Jews, even to this day, they look back at Passover and remember the time in Egypt when God went and if you didn't have the blood on your doorpost, your firstborn was killed. All right? So they're all commemorative of something. They are to remember. Now, 3 of these feasts are in the month of Nisan. Okay? And 3 of the feasts are in the month of Tishri. So there's 3 in fall, and there's 3 in spring. And then you got the one in the middle, kind of between them. Now, something else to note about these feasts is that they are all prophetic. All right? There's some prophecy with these feasts. See, God knew what He was doing when He was saying, Moses, pay special attention. Here are your 7 feasts. And He told them exactly when they would be and what it was for, when they would be remembered. Okay? We found out also that when you read about the tabernacle, when you read about the temple, everything in that temple, from the altar to the washing pool, to the menorah, to the showbread, to the veil, everything in there is prophetic. And as we've studied, it's all about Jesus Christ. That's what it's all about, okay? And so, what do you think all of these feasts are pointing to? Jesus. They all point to Jesus in one way or another. Okay. And Colossians chapter 2, verses 16 and 17, we have Paul who writes, Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. When he says, which are a shadow of things to come, he's saying, look, all those meals you've been partaking of, that's prophecy of things that were to happen. So even Paul goes back and reiterates that the feasts of Moses, these feasts that you've been partaking of, they're all prophetic of future events. Okay? Because all of these feasts started way back in Exodus, right? And so he's saying they were prophetic of something future, of something to come. They were a shadow of things to come. That's great, Pastor. But what does the Jewish months and calendars and feasts have anything to do with the ark coming to rest on the 17th of Nisan? Anybody want to take a guess? In the religious calendar, when we look on here, it says, and the ark rested in the 7th month. Now, Genesis is before God told Moses in Exodus that the first month would be in Nisan, right? Okay. So the 7th month in the old calendar is what? Nisan. So the ark came to rest in the month of Nisan. Later on in Exodus, God said Nisan is the first month in the year. All right, you following me? Okay. So we know when the ark came to rest, in Nisan. All right. What else happens in Nisan? Specifically on the 14th of Nisan, in the spring. Passover. Passover happens on the 14th of Nisan every year. That's when God told Moses, hey, the first month is this now. By the way, tell all the people to take some blood and put it on the doorposts, and I will pass over them. When did Jesus get crucified? On the Passover. On the 14th. Well, that's great, Pastor, but that's the 14th. The ark came to rest on the 17th. What happened 3 days after Christ was crucified? He rose again. The gospel was complete. Right? 1 Corinthians 15, verses 1 through 4. He came, lived the perfect life. He was killed, He was buried, and He was resurrected on the 3rd day. 14 plus 3 is the 17th of the first month, the religious month, right? And because of what Jesus Christ did, can we rest? He is our rest, right? He is our rest. And it's kind of ironic too, because Noah is starting new. The old world is behind him, and now there's a whole new world for you. Do you see? When we accept Jesus Christ, the old man is dead, and now there's something new. So there is so much fascination and beauty in the Word of God. If you take the time to just kind of look at it and study it, and I didn't come up with this, but other people have seen this. I'm reteaching what I've learned, okay? A lot of it. Now there's something on here I thought about when I was sitting right there as we were praying, and it just came to me, and I'll share that with you. But so yeah, a specific date. So when you see certain things given, now that's not the case with every date, but this is like the first time, like, on this day, this happened. It's like, why did we need to know that? Whenever you ask yourself, why did we need to know that? Study it and see what you can find out. See what you can find out. Now, where is Mount Ararat? Brother, if you'll pull up the first slide. I did get a picture of it. Ararat is actually two mountains. The taller mountain is about 17,000 feet above sea level. That's a tall mountain. That's a tall mountain. It is perpetually covered in snow and ice. And the other one is 13,000 feet. But they're both referred to as Mount Ararat. And it's in eastern Turkey, near the borders of Armenia, Iran, and Azerbaijan. Okay? Now, has anybody found the ark yet? I mean, there's people who say they have, but there's been a lot of people, Marco Polo, and there's been other ones. Even in the 1900s, there were people like, yeah, I found the ark, I saw it. And guess where they're looking? Right? Ararat, Mount Ararat. Bible says Mount Ararat, right? So they're looking in this area, but no one's ever given physical proof. There's no real proof, tangible proof that we can see as far as they found the ark. And as we study, there's a clue coming up in Genesis chapter 11, okay? In Genesis chapter 11. In Genesis chapter 11, verse 2, it says, "And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there." This verse comes after Noah and his sons get off the ark, right? And his son starts to have children, and it goes into the genealogies of the different children. It goes through Nimrod, the Tower of Babel, and the land of Shinar. So it's talking about that. But there's a verse that says, "And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar," which is where the Tower of Babel, Babylon, which is in Iraq, right, was built, and they dwelt there. Now, next slide, please. There's Mount Ararat in eastern Turkey, all right? And there's Babel, where the land of Shinar is. Which direction is Shinar from where the ark landed? South. Pretty much directly south, right? And where did it say in chapter 11 that they traveled from and settled in the land of Shinar? From the east. So the bottom line is, we don't know where the ark is. Okay, we don't know. Have the mountains been renamed, or is there a different Mount Ararat? I don't know. I just know there's been no physical proof of the ark yet. What a testimony that would be if somebody found the ark. Do you think the world would kind of wake up? Like, whoa. I mean, if it was literally proven that there was an ark found on the top of a mountain, that'd probably shut a lot of mouths, wouldn't it? But then would it be by faith? Lord, I'll believe you when I see you. Too late. Too late. It's by faith that you are saved. It is by faith. Anyways, I think one day it will turn up. That's my personal opinion. I think it will. All right, let's continue on with verses 5 through 9. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. All right, you can see the mountains now, right? What's happening? The water's receding. Very good. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. Abated means receding, gone. Okay. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark. Now, where's Noah and his family living right now? See, the waters have stopped, but there's still lots of water, right? And so they're just waiting. Can you imagine his sons and his daughter-in-laws? No, how long is this going to last? Call on God. Do something. We can't keep hanging out on the ark. Is this life? You all have families. You know what I'm talking about. You keep somebody in your house for a year or 377 days and see if they're happy. So I can only imagine what Noah's going through here. Now, the top of mountains in the distance can be seen. I imagine Noah went out one day and he goes, "What is that?" And he called his sons and they're like, "That's a mountain. That's a mountaintop, Dad." And it's probably just in one place and he saw it. Okay? And so what did he send out first? Which type of animal? A raven. Is a raven a clean animal or a dirty animal? Dirty, right? It's unclean because it eats carrion, right? So he sent it out. And what happened when the raven came back? It didn't. The raven didn't come back. Nope, the raven did not come back. Then he sent out a dove. What happened with the first dove? Because after 7 days, he sent out a dove. What happened? The dove came back. Couldn't find any place to land, right? He went as far as he could, or she went as far as she could and couldn't see anywhere to put her feet. She won't land on dead bodies. She's not going to land it. Come back. She's a clean animal. So she come back to the ark. All right. Verses 10 through 12. 10 through 12. And he stayed yet other 7 days. And again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. And so Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. So once again, 7 days later, he sent out another dove. The dove doesn't stay gone, but comes back with what? An olive branch. Okay, comes back with an olive branch. 7 days later, he sends out another dove, and what happens? She doesn't come back. She doesn't come back. Now, I find that interesting because an unclean bird was sent first. It didn't return. Then you got a dove that went out, couldn't find anything, comes back. Went out 7 days later, brought an olive branch. Went out 7 days later and didn't come back. So what does that tell Noah? Landed somewhere, right? Or it came back to the ark. So it landed somewhere. I wonder, as I was sitting here tonight, I haven't heard anyone explain the raven. There's been people saying, why did he send an unclean bird out? I don't know. Maybe because it could land on floating bodies, but I'm thinking, body ain't going to float that long. And it's been puzzling me. But then I'm like, well, what if it represents groups of people? What if the raven, the unclean, didn't come back because it was lost? Nothing to set your feet on. No, nothing. And then that dove went out and came back with nothing, right? But it came back. And then the olive branch, we know the olive branch represents who? Israel. But then that last dove, it went out and it didn't come back. Could that be the church? It found rest, right? I don't know. I'm starting to think kind of along those lines. I've not heard this anywhere else, but I just wanted to share that with you because I think everything is put in here for a reason. You know? And so, if you are unclean, if you do not have Jesus Christ washing your sins away, you are lost. There will be no going home. You'll be going to a different home, and I wouldn't call that home. And Israel, right? Did they accept the Messiah when He was born and came into the world? No. No. But guess what? They will call on Jesus Christ. That's what the whole tribulation's about. So I'm wanting to do further study into that with these animals, but I just wanted to share that with y'all. That's neither here nor there, just something that I thought was interesting. All right, verses 13 through 19. And it came to pass in the 601st year, that's Noah's, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful, and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. Verse 19, every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kinds, went forth out of the ark. 377 days they were on that ark. God tells them to come off. It's time to come off. So they came off and they stepped foot on dry ground. They also released the animals, right? Now, if you would have been on that ark with your family for 1 year and 17 days. Imagine the smells. I don't think it was a democracy. I think whatever Noah said is what went. You're finally allowed to get off that boat. What would be the first thing you would do? Kiss the ground? What else? Run, smell some fresh air. What did Noah do? He built an altar. God blessed him and his family. He saved them through the flood. And he's like, you know what? I'm building an altar. And these clean animals, all these 7 pairs of clean animals that I loaded up, I'm going to give an offering unto the Lord. Of all these clean animals, I'm going to give an offering. He built an altar. He offered burnt offerings of all the clean beasts. And that's in verse 20. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Church, when we get blessings, whether it's time off work, time at home to rest and relax, money, gifts, we need to be making sure that we give God His part. He didn't ask for 90%. He said, you can keep 90% of it. Give me 10. Don't get me wrong, the government goes in and takes a bit of it too, but God only asked for 10% of it. And so what Noah did here, he set the example for all of us. Always give thanks to God for the things He's brought you through. The things that you don't even know He brought you through. Because I've told y'all before, see, my God's not limited by time. And it is my firm belief that sometimes when we pray for things, that they don't even happen. Because see, if we pray that, somebody gets better because they got in an accident, is it impossible for my God to hear our prayers, go back, prevent that accident from even happening, and then we would have no knowledge of it? It blows your mind, but my God is not limited by time. So I wonder how many more thanks we're going to have to give Him. And see, it's not a seen thing. It's not an experienced thing. So it still requires faith. It still requires faith. I just find that interesting. Verse 21 and 22. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in His heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So, all those climate activists that say there's only going to be one season, they're lying to you. My Bible tells me as long as the earth exists, or as long as it remains, that we would have these seasons. We would have a time to plant and a time to harvest. These things would happen. Cold. I wonder what the temperature was like before the fall of man. Was it just the perfect temperature all the time? And see, we found out that, people used to live almost 1,000 years. Methuselah, right? 969 years? 900 years, 800 years, they lived a long time. But see, when the fall happened, entropy kicked in. Things started to decay, to include our bodies, and we see the time span starting to shrink. And then the flood, that was a catastrophic event that changed even the climate that we live in, the atmosphere. It changed so much. So we don't have lifespans of 900 years anymore. Jimmy Carter just lived to 100 years old, and that was something else. So we are in that steady state of decay still, okay? We are still in that steady state of decay. The Lord accepted Noah's offering. He made a vow to never again curse the ground for man's sake, nor would he smite every living thing. I had never caught before that he said, never again curse the ground for man's sake. I knew he said, I'll never flood the earth again, but he said, I'll never curse the ground. Because remember, he didn't curse Adam. He cursed Eve, he cursed the serpent, but instead of cursing Adam, he cursed the ground. And the New Testament tells us that even nature itself yearns for the redeeming King. I thought about that today as I was studying. I looked over at my dog, Enoch. And my dog's name is Enoch, just so you know. I call him Enoch. But I was like, I wonder if he knows. Does he yearn for the return of Jesus Christ to make all things new? Even the trees outside, are they yearning and crying for the Lord to return? Do they join me in the mornings? I think about these things. But nature itself yearns for the redeeming King. That's chapter 8. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to see where they're off the ark. And Noah gets a little too excited. He is going to partake in that grape juice that people say is not alcoholic, but I'm telling you, it was. He got drunk, all right? And then his son messed up too. So we're going to read about that, and then we're going to get into genealogies, okay? Begat, 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 begat. But I'm telling you, it's not going to be boring, because we're going to track the line of Seth coming down, and Noah is a fresh start. So everybody after Noah and his sons that got off the ark, if you were to ask somebody 200 years from the time Noah got off the ark, hey, where did Noah come from? We have no record of him being born. Think about it. He's always been here. Yes, 200 years later. What great-great-great-grandchild would that be? It'd be a lot of greats, wouldn't it? But he lived even longer than that. And his sons lived a long time too. And so we're going to pay particular attention to the longevity of Noah and his sons and their offspring all the way down to Abraham. Okay? So if you want to do a little advanced research, go ahead and research how long those guys lived. Okay? And then you might be surprised at who was still living when these other men were living. Like when Nimrod was born, was Noah still living? How about Abraham? Was Noah still around? Was Shem around? That's things we've never been taught about. So we're going to look at that because, you know, there's a lot of Jewish history out there that may seem unbelievable because, well, I didn't read that in my Bible. Or did you? Could it be? So, anyways, questions on that? All right, got through a whole chapter. We are now post-flood. We have made it to post-flood. So, we've come a long way and we still got a long way to go, but some interesting things are going to be happening, especially with the patriarchs and the individuals, and eventually they're going to all end up, Jacob's children are going to be in Egypt. And so that's where we'll end Genesis at when we're done. Don't forget, I think you've been handed out a copy of the proposal for our budget for 2025. So if you would, please look over those. If you have any questions, you can ask me, Sister Wendy, or Sister Sherry. We'll answer it the best we can. And then hopefully we will vote on this Sunday to get it approved, and let's get to work for the Lord. All hearts and minds clear? All right, if everybody would please stand.